When Philip gets off the Elizabeth in New York, I'm going to be on the dock to meet him. I'm going to fly while he's sailing.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Suh, who is the CEO at Lunit. It's a startup that focuses on addressing cancer through AI-powered imaging biomarker. Thanks for joining today. Thank you. Brandon, you have a long list of designations after your name. You're board-certified physician from Seoul National University. You also have your M.B.A. and M.P.H. from KAIST. And you're incredibly active when it comes to academic research and publishing in the scientific journals. Can you tell us about your journey from biological science, medicine, to now technology?
Yeah. So I was always interested in business in terms of entrepreneurship, and I was in an era where the internet boom and a lot of startups that were successful in that phase. I thought that having my own expertise in a specific field was something that I needed rather than just go straight to business. So I wanted to specialize in an area I was very truly passionate about, and that was cancer. So I started with bio. And once I did that, I did a lot of research, and I realized that this whole field is kind of more focused on medicine rather than just basic research. A lot of basic research is really geared towards targeting the clinical side to develop useful treatment or diagnostic tests. And because of that, I went to medical school, having in mind, I didn't really plan to pursue a career in cancer patient care, but really to learn and gain as much expertise as possible in medical school. And after all that, and after going through the residency in family medicine, I was in the process of starting my own company. But at that time, I met Anthony, who was actually the former and founding CEO of Lunit. And I was really fascinated to learn about deep learning. And back then, deep learning was not as kind of famous as it was now. And so I decided to actually join his company that he had just recently founded. So I first joined Lunit as a chief medical officer, and I've been serving as CEO since around 3 years ago.
Yeah, what's interesting from your story is that you knew that you wanted to start some sort of a venture, but your starting point was really around expertise and making sure that you built up that expertise so that you're in a position to be able to take a venture forward. So I love that, and I want to be able to come back to that in just a few minutes. But let's first talk about what is Lunit, and tell us about eventually how you went from chief medical officer to your current role.
So Lunit is a medical AI company with a mission to conquer cancer through AI. So specifically, we enable more effective diagnosis and treatment of cancer through analysis of medical data through AI. That's basically what we do. So the transition from my CMO role to CEO has been more from a transition of it reflects the transition of our company from a more of a R&D based, technology based company to a more commercial, to a more clinical company. So we're transitioning, and the medical expertise was becoming more and more important in terms of getting the regulatory approvals for the products and actually clinically validating our products and really talking to the users, the doctors, and really finding out the main key unmet clinical needs that we would need to address and how we would sell to hospitals and all that. So that became the key. So the transition was kind of natural.
So let's just for about a minute or so talk briefly about the Korean FDA process equivalent and how that process is similar or dissimilar to what's happening in, let's say, the Americas or Europe, for instance. And how is your product then able to export out to other parts of the world?
It's basically very similar. It's actually the Korean version. It has reference to the FDA, as many things goes. So basically, we go through a process where we run simulated tests involving doctors using AI. So we compare before using AI and after using AI and see the effect the AI brings in terms of the diagnostic performance, and also explore whether there are any risks involved. So the concept is very similar. It's just a matter of the specific protocol or the specific processes that is needed. So that's kind of the details that are different. But overall, it's pretty much the same, whether it be the Korean FDA, whether it be the FDA or CE. It's basically very similar.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics around the precision diagnostic as well as the precision medicine and how AI is core to your approach. Specifically using AI, Lunit is able to accurately interpret image tests in a scalable way to detect abnormal findings, decrease the overall reading time, as well as decrease unnecessary tests, right? And then on the medicine, I guess the AI-powered therapeutic biomarkers are about to help predict response to specific treatment, as well as to identify the optimal treatment for individual patients and to help identify more patients who could benefit from the right treatment. So if you could elaborate, that would be helpful.
So basically, what we do is we have our proprietary deep learning technology that we have developed over the years that is optimized to analyze and train medical images. And we have also managed to collect a very large amount of data from collaborating with various hospitals throughout the world, including Korea, United States, and the United Kingdom. So once we have that database collected, what we do is we go through a process of curation, assigning the right answer to the data, and then we all combine that to develop highly accurate AI algorithms that can detect subtle lesions or can predict clinical outcome. So one of the key thing is just to kind of give you an example. For example, when we train our algorithm for our chest X-ray algorithm, the answer that we get is not based on the chest X-ray radiology report. It's actually based on CT exams. So the CT exam is so much more a detailed and more comprehensive exam than the chest X-ray. And there are many lesions that are not visible in chest X-ray, but is visible in chest CT. So instead of basing our answer on chest X-ray, we based it on chest CT. So by doing so, the AI was capable of recognizing very, very subtle findings that is hardly visible by the human vision. And because of that, the AI has become, the accuracy level has become at a superhuman level. So that's really, it's an example of what we do. So that's just an example for the chest X-ray. And for the pathology part, we train our algorithm based on clinical outcome. So we train our algorithm based on patient data, like previous patient data. So a few thousand patients who have received immune checkpoint inhibitors. We know the outcome of those patients, and we have the medical data that the patients have, including the pathology data. So we train the pathology data to have the AI extract all the various complex patterns of the tissue data that is associated with a positive response to therapy. And those very complicated and subtle features are actually too complex for humans to really realistically analyze through human vision. So that's where really the value of AI comes in. So
can you talk to us a little bit about the train, because deep learning by definition is kind of self-training. It's looking at the data, learning from the data itself. But are there some human intervention that's involved in terms of classification or tagging? So if you could talk about that. And then also, is there a limitation, even though the data size is large, are there potentially new variations that the size, the data doesn't quite address? And of course, there are other means of creating data that is manufactured rather than actual let's say CAT scan, for instance.
So we combine multiple ways of curating our data. So just a rough number would be we annotate 20% of the data that we train, and we leave out 80% unannotated on purpose. Not because we don't have the resources to annotate the rest of the 80%, but it's really something that we have figured out to be the optimal point. So 20% is really annotation is really to guide, basic guidance for the AI, that this is cancer, this is how it looks like. And then the rest is really left out for the AI to really figure out the details, figure out the patterns without any predefined rules that is being applied. So naturally, with a lot of data being trained, the AI eventually figures out the very subtle patterns or features that are associated with cancer. And that's really the gist of what happens. And yeah, I mean, there are many ways of alternative ways of using data, like as you mentioned, like manufacturing data and using that. I mean, those various methodologies are actually involved. So we do various, like for example, we purposely vary the contrast level, the color, or the size, and we tilt it and everything. So even given our the same data set, we really make noise on purpose to make it more complicated, and that's kind of included in the training process. And I think there's many different ways that we do that.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you guys intentionally introduce noise. So let's talk about CAT scan in the sense of other startups are using multiple or modes of data. Right now, you guys are primarily focused on CAT scans, but do you foresee that at some point you could also merge X-rays and other forms of data sources, different types of sources, so that you're actually getting a different set of perspective for the AI?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think definitely that's really what's going to be in the future. Right now, I think you understand it pretty well. The way it is, we kind of the whole clinical practice is mainly focused on kind of more segmented methods, where you're just focusing on chest X-ray, or where you're focusing on chest CT or pathology, given the specific clinical setting, whether it be the screening part, the more comprehensive diagnosis process, or figuring out what treatment the patient would need to receive. So it's not really combined, and also it's due to complexity in terms of combining. So I mean, doctors do not know how to combine the various different types of data that is available. There isn't enough data. So I think it's really a question of really figuring out what all that means. So combining it and kind of figuring out perhaps the value that it provides in terms of whether it be prediction, whether it be diagnosis. And we believe that eventually the biggest value of AI would be the capability of actually combining multiple different sets of data, including just even clinical data, like symptoms, like age, like lab results, and then the imaging, and all that actually combined eventually. And we believe that will lead to a very unprecedented level of accuracy and insights that were not available before.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think that's a topic in itself. Let's focus a little bit around your kind of core IP and patent portfolio relative to other startups. So in Silicon Valley and of course other parts of the world, there are other startups that's doing almost nearly exactly the same as what you guys are working on. How do you guys, how is your approach and technique different and the results different, which also gets into a lot of the publications that you guys have participated in?
So I guess a lot of that would involve perhaps kind of trade secrets, perhaps, that I'm not may not be too comfortable with everything, but we do have our own proprietary like platform that we have built over the years. The result is that our deep learning technology has been recognized to be world leading in various competitions where we beat companies like Microsoft, Google, and IBM. And a lot of our AI products have been demonstrated to be best in class by various occasions, and that's one of the reasons why we were selected to partner with major giants like GE and Fuji. There's really the result has been just that our AI capability was superior than that of our competitors, and the reason for it, I guess, would be multiple reasons involving, including, I guess, the type of data, the scale, the quality of data that we have collected, and also the proprietary AI technology that we have built over the years. And I think it's difficult to really pinpoint like a specific item that kind of, it's very clearly distinguishable from some others. I think if we kind of look at the details, there might be very specific details that are different, but because we don't know the approach of our competitors, because we don't know how exactly they build their AI algorithms, so really difficult to actually clearly like answer that question. But just overall, it's just that our AI has been demonstrated to be superior than that of others. And I think what you also pointed out that the validations, you pointed out that it's actually very important. It's important in this healthcare industry to really build that academic credibility. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about having a good product. It's really about properly validating them in a proper clinical validations. And I think even from the beginning of our company, we thought that it was really important to do that. And because of all those efforts, we've managed to publish in more than 40 papers in top-tier journals like JAMA Oncology and Lancet Digital Health. And that has helped us build a pretty robust academic credibility among the scientific community. And that's really helping us in terms of the branding and in terms of kind of the visibility that we have among our users.
So I guess my next question is really around when you have set the bar so high and you're essentially leader of the pack at this point, how do you maintain that? And what are you thinking in terms of your approach moving forward from a product roadmap to ensure that you maintain that superiority?
So I guess one of the obvious, points would be we will continue to gather more data. We will continue to improve our AI technology. But I think that's really the obvious part. But I think there are other ways that we are thinking. For example, I think in many ways, I think we're trying to figure out ways to leverage the customer base that we have, and it's expanding and expanding. And right now, we don't really have a system where we collect data from the customers, and because there's some legal issues and there's a very gray area of legal policy that whether this is okay to do or not. But we plan to kind of figure out a way so that data from the customers can be continuously used, or parts of the data from the customers to be partially used. Maybe our users can maybe push a button when they see an image that was incorrectly detected by the AI, and we can collect those that the AI missed, and we can collect those and actually reinforce the data more and more. And I think that's really one of the best ways and more scalable ways to continuously improve our AI.
Yeah. So essentially, using the power of the crowdsourcing and getting the actual end user to participate in that feedback process makes sense. Mm-hmm. My last question for you is: are there any project or product failures that you can share in terms of lessons learned?
I think I'm not sure if it's really a failure per se, but I think there was a time when in the early days we thought we can do everything. So there was a time where we were doing cancer imaging, we were doing like cardiovascular imaging, we were doing like neural, we were doing everything, and then kind of realized that there was a lot of we were just spreading ourselves too thin. We're just doing too much because our experience so far at that time was really based on R&D. So for R&D, you can really scale out. But in terms of commercialization, you have to go through the regulatory approval process. You have to clinically validate all the different products and really sell and go to market. And that really was a very overwhelming task to do all at once. And a lot of our team members were demotivated, having, the sheer volume of work that we had to do and all the problems that we had to solve at once. And, I felt that we need to kind of make a bold move to kind of simplify our vision. So at that point, we simplified our vision to really focus on just cancer, just focus on one area. And I think that really made a big difference. There's a lot of, in terms of the clarification of the vision of the company, was much more improved. A lot of people were more focused. And I think we're doing better because we kind of simplified. And I think that discipline is very important as a startup. Of course, as a startup, you must be nimble and flexible in your approach, but it doesn't mean that you should expand beyond your capabilities. And you may end up achieving nothing while you trying to do everything. So that's really a lesson that I really learned in that process.
So just to recap, I think the storyline that I heard is starting out with expertise and really building up the expertise, a body of knowledge over a period of time, having mastery of the domain and the subject matter expertise. And of course, on the R&D side, to your point, there's a lot of areas that you can look at. But when it comes to transition to commercialization, having that hyper focus so that everything is pointing to a singular, point, and all the efforts are being channeled to that, so that you have the greatest probability of success. So thank you so much for joining today. It looks like you guys are making great progress. So today I've been joined by Brandon Suh, who is the CEO of Lunit. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.